let's just do this one. The Amazing Spider-Man was released in 2012, directed by Mark Webb, starring Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Dennis Leary, Rhys Ifans. And as a huge Spider-Man fan back in 2012, I was kind of excited to see this. I was still bummed that Spider-Man 4 wasn't happening, but I was going into this with an open mind. I'd only seen like the very first trailer and I think maybe a couple TV spots, so I didn't really know much about this movie, but I was excited to see it nonetheless because of how big of a Spider-Man fan that I was and still am. And did it live up to my expectations? Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. Starting off with the good, I'm gonna keep at least these two reviews pretty brief. I don't really have much to say on terms of either Andrew Garfield movie, but Andrew Garfield was pretty good in this movie as Spider-Man. I liked his quippiness as the character and his whole demeanor of how he went about being Spider-Man. They made him a little more spider-like in his movements, which I thought was actually pretty cool. Some people don't really like that, but I thought it was an interesting way to go about the character, and I very much appreciate it. Emma Stone plays Gwen Stacy in this movie, and her and Peter are actually a thing in this movie. I really enjoyed her performance as Gwen Stacy. I wish they would have given her a bit more to do in these two movies, but nonetheless, she was still really good, and her and Andrew Garfield's chemistry was absolutely amazing. It's probably helped by the fact that her and Andrew Garfield were dating in real life when they were filming these movies, but either way, I really liked Gwen Stacy in these movies. Dennis Leary is Gwen Stacy's father, the police captain of New York, and I like that they gave him a little more to do in this movie than they did in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3. I found him an interesting character, and his constant collision with Peter Parker over the legality of what Spider-Man is doing is interesting. I'll get more on the legalities later, but I really liked his character development throughout the movie, and when he shows up at the end to help Peter with the lizard, I thought it was a really good conclusion to his arc within the movie. I really didn't mind the action scenes in this movie. I thought some of them were pretty poorly lit, but the ones we could actually see, especially the one in the high school, was really good. I actually really enjoy that whole fight sequence, and it also gives us one of best Stan Lee cameos as the librarian during that fight. I thought that was a really cool segment. And the final fight on top of the Oscorp Tower, again, pretty poorly lit, but it's still a pretty fun fight nonetheless, even though it does end kind of abruptly. But either way, what are you gonna do about it? Aunt May in this movie is played by Sally Field. I thought she did pretty good. Not as good as Rosemary Harris, but still, she did pretty good, and I enjoyed her performance. She felt like the most age-appropriate version of Aunt May, where the Aunt May from the Raimi films felt more like a grandmother than an aunt. I feel like this version of Aunt May feels the most of what age Aunt May would be while Peter's in high school, and I really liked that. That about wraps up the positive section of this review. Moving on to what I didn't like in this movie, and unfortunately, there's quite a bit that I did not like in this movie. First of all, I did not like Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben. I just did not. He did not feel fatherly. He didn't seem nice whatsoever. And when he dies, I felt nothing. That's probably a horrible thing to say, but I really felt nothing when Uncle Ben died in this movie because of how poorly they made the character. And also to the fact that this guy literally tried to jump someone with a gun. Even though he wasn't even anywhere near him, and he wasn't even doing anything to him. He literally tried to jump the guy because he saw a gun on the ground. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't fly with me. I felt nothing for that, I'm sorry. And also, I hated the villain in this movie. Rhys Ifans played Kurt Connors, and Rhys Ifans is a good actor. I really like him. I'm really excited to see him in the new Kingsman movie next week, I believe. But his version of the Lizard, first of all, the design is awful. It looks like a green Voldemort with a tail. And his motivation is just the worst. What even is his motivation? He wants to turn the whole city into giant lizards. That's it. There's no reason to that. It's just, I don't like it. And Peter's motivation for becoming Spider-Man. I cover this in the Spider-Man 3 review, that Peter became Spider-Man because of responsibility. Not for revenge and not for fame, but for responsibility. And in this movie, he literally becomes Spider-Man. And he makes the suit so he can hide his face while he's jumping people in dark alleys trying to find the guy who killed Uncle Ben. What was that? What the hell? It's not Spider-Man, in my opinion. It feels nothing like Spider-Man. And I'm sorry, but making Peter a skater punk? No, Peter is a nerd. He's a social outcast because of how nerdy he is. And that's about all I can say to that. On top of that, this movie was marketed as the untold story about Peter Parker's backstory. But it's literally the same thing as the Sam Raimi movie, just done to a very, very lesser extent. If you're gonna market it as an untold story, make it an untold story, not something we already saw way better 10 years ago. But, and then finally the score in this movie just doesn't feel like a Spider-Man score. It just feels like your typical action movie score, and I just couldn't get behind it. Unlike the Danny Elfman and Christopher Young score from the first 3 movies, they felt like Spider-Man. This one just didn't, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people love this movie. I can understand why, but it's just not my thing. Final thoughts, The Amazing Spider-Man for me feels like it was only made to retain the rights to the character of Spider-Man after Sony canned Sam Raimi's 4th movie, and I'm sorry, it just wasn't my thing. The Amazing Spider-Man for me was pretty disappointing, and I could only give it a 5 out of 10. So that was my thoughts on The Amazing Spider-Man. What did you think about it? Let me know down in the comments section. I know we are going to disagree on this because almost everybody but me loves this movie. And I can see why, because it's there. The potential is there to be a good Spider-Man movie. It just fell flat for me. But let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video, and I will see you tomorrow with my review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2.